this virtual platform. Today's meeting is being recorded. If you don't wish to be recorded, please turn off your video. If you have questions, please place them in the chat box. And without further ado, I will turn it over to Mary Crutchfield, our second VP in charge of legislation. Mary?
You're muted, Mary.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I'm glad that we can see each other virtually, and I look forward to the day when we can see each other in person. I want to start with reminding everyone that it's important to go to the League of Women Voters Virginia website and check out the talking points for advocacy. And the way to do that is to go to lwv-va.org/action/talking points. Also, I want to share with you some notes about the schedule. As you know, today is the first day of the General Assembly, and the House convenes at 12 noon, and you can follow, you can watch by going to the LIS and clicking on the video. And the Senate also convenes at 12 noon. Also, half an hour after the floor sessions adjourn, there's going to be a Privileges and Elections Committee meeting where one of the bills that we are following, HB 1810, on the voter registration online failure with a deadline extension, is going to be heard. Also, I want to share with you, I observed the State Board of Elections meeting yesterday, and the main purpose of that was for certifying 2 special elections that were held on January 5th. And there are going to be 2 special elections held in February. And Commissioner Piper announced that there's going to be a post-election risk limiting audit that will be conducted the week of February 16th. Also, I want to pass along to you that Commissioner Piper gave a big thank you to everyone who worked the November election, and said that for the most part, everything went smoothly. We had a huge turnout. And I want to thank all of you who worked as election officers and who worked to get the vote out. It really was an amazing effort considering all of the challenges that we had. Our first legislator visiting this morning is Delegate Jay Jones. Is he in the room?
I'm
yet?
here. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
We have the honor of welcoming you. Delegate Jay Jones is from the 89th district, and he is on several committees the Committee of Counties, Cities and Towns, Transportation, Appropriations, and on subcommittees, he's chair of Transportation Motor Vehicle Subcommittee, and in Appropriations, the Subcommittee of Higher Education Subcommittee. You have the floor.
Well, thank you, Mary, and good morning, everybody. It's good to see some old friends here virtually. I hope that everybody is safe and healthy and sort of weathering this pandemic and the situation as best you can. But I just wanted to drop by this morning, say hello, give my regards, and just talk to you guys for a second about what is about to happen. You guys are no strangers to the situation at hand. This is a different session. It is virtual, although I'm coming to you from my office in Richmond today. The House will be meeting virtually and the Senate will be meeting in person. But for you guys as advocates, you guys will have a harder job this year because you're going to be virtual. But I just wanted to say thank you for all that you do. Day in, day out, the League of Women Voters across Virginia has really brought the heat and really made some positive change in this Commonwealth. And it's been a pleasure to be able to listen to all of you over the last 4 years. I can't believe I'm going into my fourth session, but really to be able to work with you and partner with you over these last few years has been tremendous. I will make one quick point. This is obviously a tight time with people's pocketbooks and all the priorities that we have. A lot of the things that we would like to do cost money. As a member of the Appropriations Committee, like Mary said, the Higher Ed Subcommittee, the K through 12 Subcommittee, and the Health and Human Resources Subcommittee, I get to sort of put my hands on about 2/3 of the budget. And so I tell people about 1/3 of the budget is what really sort of has an ability to be moved and changed. A lot of it's already spoken for. And so I want you guys to be mindful, and I want you guys to know that as you continue to talk to folks over these next few weeks, know and understand that we have some really tough choices to make, and that our fiscal situation obviously remains of the highest order. But there are so many things that we can do that are on the table this year as it relates to voting rights, as it relates to justice reform, as it relates to energy and the environment. And so I'm really excited about the prospect of this session, even under these unusual circumstances. And I know you guys are nonpartisan. I know you guys really kind of like to shoot it straight, but some of you guys know that I'm running for Attorney General. And so after session, we will really kick that into high gear, but very excited about that opportunity because I do think a lot of the things that the League of Women Voters stands for are enforced and affected through that office. And I think it's a really, really important position. And I think that we'll do well in that spot. So I look forward to working with you guys over the next several weeks. And I look forward to speaking with you again soon. But thank you guys for giving me a couple of minutes this morning. And again, everybody, please stay healthy. Please stay safe. When it's your time to get your vaccine, please go do it and let everybody know the safety and the efficacy of it all, because we can't get back to normal where you guys can't be standing in my office telling me about the issues of the day unless everybody does that. So again, everybody, please stay healthy, stay safe, and God bless you all. Take care.
Can we ask a couple of questions?
If you want, you got me, I think, for another 10 or 15 minutes, but sure, let's do it.
Can you talk to us about what legislation you are patroning or co-patroning?
Sure. So I'll give you
that in regards to voting in elections.
Sure. So I'll be co-patroning a whole host of elections and voting rights bills this year. There are a couple of different versions of the Virginia Voting Rights Act. As you guys know, the Voting Rights Act at the federal level has been eviscerated and decimated over the course of a couple of decades, so that it's almost toothless. And so what we want to do is we want to ensure that folks here in Virginia's right to vote is protected. I often tell people that the right to vote is sacred. That's what makes us special. That's what makes us American. It's nothing else but the fact that we get to go to the ballot box and express our views. That's why, in addition to co-sponsoring that legislation, I've introduced a constitutional amendment to make sure that everybody can vote. Once you turn 18, that right shall not be abridged under any circumstances. What we have seen over the last 60 years especially have been systemic efforts to suppress votes of folks who aren't necessarily white men. And so what we want to do is we want to make sure that that right is afforded to everybody. I tell people that my family members, people who came before me, they died. They were subjected to dogs, hoses, all of these things, also that people like me could have the right to vote. And every time that we don't do that, we cheapen their legacy. And so for me, expanding the franchise, making it open to everybody, it should be our #1 priority. So I hope we can get that passed. Maybe Locke has that in the Senate, and then we can have this intervening election this year and then pass it again in 22 to put it to the voters in the fall of 22.
I'm going to ask our first Vice President, Joan Port, if there are any other questions in the chat.
Thank you, Mary. Yes, there's one. What are your thoughts on Senator Lucas's bill for the restoration of felon rights, SB 272?
Well,
And I apologize, I should have said Senator Locke, but I just want to distinguish between the restoration of rights, which your bill speaks about, versus what we call 100% right to vote, which would not take away civil rights to begin with.
correct, right. That and that's an important distinction. And I'm going to address that question about Senator Lucas's bill as well. Look, I thought it was a bad decision by the Supreme Court of Virginia. I guess it's now 6 years ago, when Governor McAuliffe tried to restore folks' rights kind of en masse, which I think is the right thing. And I think that's the way I read the Constitution of Virginia. So I disagree with the way the Supreme Court of Virginia came down on that. But any opportunity that we have to make sure that people who have paid their debt to society can get their rights back and not have to petition on an individual basis is a good thing, right? That petition process is nothing more than a voter suppression mechanism that has roots in Jim Crow, that has roots in the Black Code. We have an incredible opportunity here to really root out and pull out and weed out some of these things that have been on the books for a long, long time, that have been aimed at not letting people come and do what is they're entitled to do as Americans and as Virginians. And so my hope is that will get through the Senate and get to us in the House. I wish that I was on privileges and elections. I'm not, so I can't see any of that stuff until it gets to the floor. But that's why I like to co-patron bills. That's why I've introduced a constitutional amendment. I think you guys know me well enough to know my commitment to voting rights and my commitment to the franchise. And so anything that we can do to advance those causes here in Virginia is always going to be a priority of mine.
There's another question about the death penalty, abolishing the death penalty. How do you feel on that?
So, it's a very timely question. As some of you guys may have seen yesterday, I put out a statement. I support the abolition of the death penalty. To me, it's deeply abhorrent. The state has no business killing its citizens. I'm very excited about the governor's move to say, hey, look, let's get this off the books. Deeply saddened last night. I'm sure some of you guys saw that a woman was put to death at the federal level in Indiana. The first time a woman was killed in, I think, 70 years now. That's a backward practice. It's, to me, there's been no sort of connection between that as a deterrent for folks. And again, it's a barbaric practice. The list of countries that employ the death penalty is a pretty ignominious one, and I don't want to be on it. And so that's why I strongly support the abolition of the death penalty. I'm a chief co-patron of Mike Mullen's bill to do so. I do believe that we are finally at a point where we've got a critical mass in both chambers to do that. So again, you guys need to go talk to folks, in addition to me and the other legislators on here, to make sure that everybody's on the same page, because Virginia, we're always a little bit slow to do things. But I think when we have this opportunity right in front of us, we can't waste it and we can't kick it down the road any further.
There are 2 pre-clearance bills up. Can you speak to them?
Yes, and I think you're talking about Delegate Van Valkenburg's bill and Delegate Price's bill, if I'm not mistaken. So I think they're pretty similar, and I understand that I think they're trying to work together on this. I was actually speaking to both of them about their bills yesterday or the day before. But I think, for us, putting in those mechanisms at the state level to make sure that everybody's right to vote is protected, that we are not sort of putting in place these systems that are going to sort of suppress the vote is really important. And again, when you've seen the evisceration of the Voting Rights Act at the federal level, it's on us to put those provisions back in place at the state level. And so I think ultimately that's going to get into one bill. Hopefully those 2 very, very smart legislators can work together to find that common ground. But I think what is most important is that you see our commitment to doing something rather than nothing at the state level. To have multiple people put that in is, I think, very instructive, and it shows you where our values lie. And I think, I want you guys to hold us accountable. 2021, I like to tell people, is the year of accountability. People like me come on these groups, these chats, and tell you a whole bunch of stuff about what we support and what we like to do and all that. Go look at our voting records, hold us accountable. And then when we come back to you, you can say, Jay, you didn't do what you said you were going to do. You let me down. It is very easy for us to tell you what you want to hear. But I think one of the only politicians who will ask you to continue to stay on me to make sure that I'm consistent and I can explain what I've done and why I'm doing it. And I think that's really, really important as well in this process. But for me, those pre-clearance bills are really important. Actually, I think Van Valkenburg is in the office next to me right now. So if you guys have any follow-up questions, I'll go talk to him personally.
The next question is about the Lucas-Eben National Popular Vote Bill.
Mm-hmm. So interesting proposition. I know somebody put it, I think Levine put it in last year. I have lost a little bit of faith in the Electoral College over the years, but I guess it's been restored with the election of President Biden. I think more than anything than the popular vote, we've got to focus on our election integrity and making sure that our systems are secure, right? That's why we moved to paper ballots a few years ago after 2016. But I think there's different ways that people can get at that popular vote compact. I know that there's a National Popular Vote Compact, but for me, I think we've got really, really important sort of things to focus on here at the state level as it relates to election security and election openness. I'll leave it for people who are smarter than I ever will be to debate that in privileges and elections, but we'll see if it gets out of committee and gets to the floor.
There's a question about Delegate Rasool's bill allowing people to vote at 16. Your thoughts?
I would love to see the age of majority drop when it comes to voting. I think we in America have a very strange way of equating what you can do and when, whether it's 18 to vote and join the military and 25 to rent a car and all that. I think what is really important to focus on is the bills that we really pushed last year in the 2020 session, which said, look, you are automatically registered to vote when you go get a license unless you opt out. That was, I think, a really big deal because for me, voting is a social activity. And when we socialize voting with our young people, it becomes a habit. I was lucky enough to grow up in a household where we voted every single time. My parents have never missed an election, general, primary, special, every single year, right? In Virginia, we vote a lot. And I tell people that we could easily have voter fatigue because we are asking you guys to come vote every June, every November, sometimes in May, depending on your locality like mine, and then a whole host of other special elections. And so making sure that our young people are aware of how important voting is, I think is really important because then I think it gets them excited. I was very lucky. The first time I got to vote in a presidential election was for President Barack Obama, which was great because there was so much energy and so much enthusiasm surrounding that, but it's not always going to be like that. And so for me, I obviously care about how people vote and who they vote for, but I'd like to see our voter participation numbers go up and up and up every single year, right? Presidential turnout should be happening in Virginia every year. And so if that's expanding the franchise, good. If that's making sure that younger people are getting involved in the process, even better. Certainly at 16, I feel like I was confident enough that I was ready to go cast my vote, but we'll see. I think these are all wonderful ideas. And you look at other countries around the globe about how they put these things into practice. And Virginia, obviously, we're going to consider it. And people say states are the laboratories of ideas. And so, if we can be the lab for this, great. Maybe some other state will do it and then we can sort of piggyback on it as well. But again, voting is so sacred. Voting is our right as Americans and as Virginians. And so anything we can do to enhance that ability, I think is a good thing.
We do have a question about the election rules that were made in 2020 on sort of an emergency basis and making them permanent.
Look,
several.
Yeah, those are important provisions. And again, who knows how long that COVID will continue on. And so I think to the extent that that's obviously still a major factor in our lives, we'll try to make sure that those are permanent. I like to say that the General Assembly, in our infinite wisdom last year, passed early voting before COVID, right? To say 45 days before your vote, before the election day, you can go vote. And so we're geniuses in that regard. So that's going to be there, right? That's not going away. I think that's fantastic. And I think it's really important and instructive to think about Virginia just a couple of years ago in a Northern Illinois University study was the 49th hardest place to vote in the country. And we've moved up 37 spots very quickly to number 12. And I would love to see us to get to number 1. And so anything that we can do to make voters' lives easier, whether it's mailing them absentee ballots, having those secure drop boxes all around your community, opening up the ability to go vote absentee on Saturdays at various satellite locations like we did in Norfolk is a good thing. To me, public participation is what makes us stronger. is what holds people like me accountable. So I can't come on here and tell you one thing and then do another thing. We want people to be able to step up and get involved in this process at every level and in every way imaginable and conceivable. And so I think whether it's through the budget or whether it's through bills, we can make sure that that practice stays in place for at least 2021 and beyond.
The final bill is about, the final question is about the women's right to choose and the anti-abortion bills that have been introduced.
You know, look, those of you guys on this Zoom who know me know that I've always supported a woman's right to choose. So any bill that's coming before us that's going to undermine that or abridge that, I will not be able to support. I think we've made some tremendous strides over the last couple of years in terms of letting women make their own healthcare choices. For me, that's been very important. I'm surrounded by a village of women at home and on the campaign trail. They keep me informed and honest on all of these things. And so for me, we have gotten to a good spot. And I think when we talk about things like that, that takes us away from our true purpose here, which is to improve the lives of all 8.5 million Virginians and growing. And so for me, you know, we need to focus on these pocketbook issues. We need to focus on the election security issues. We need to focus on the justice reform issues, things that really are important to folks all across the state, and not focusing on these issues that are wedge issues, that are election year issues. I think, you know, I don't want to sort of talk poorly about my colleagues, but it's no surprise that those bills are coming in an election year, because then we get to go start campaigning and people get to put those slick and glossy mailers out and the TV commercials where they try to divide us instead of uniting us. But I think you guys especially have the ability to see through that stuff and to really cut through the noise, keep people informed, and make sure that when they're going to the ballot box that they have the best information in front of them possible.
Okay. There is another question that came in about funding for behavioral health initiatives.
You know, those propositions come up every year. As a member of the Appropriations Subcommittee for Health and Human Resources, we see that. And so, you know, I know that my subcommittee, whether Democrat or Republican, we all can agree that we need more money for behavioral health services. It's tough in Virginia because, again, a lot of our money is already spoken for and dedicated to particular places. But I think anything that we can do to tweak some of those numbers on the margins, you know, another extra dollar here or there is going to be better than nothing. And so we'll continue to look at that. I think we have an appropriations meeting tomorrow, at least I do for that. So I'll look into that, but make no mistake, behavioral health is important to me. It's important to my colleagues, and we're going to try to put that money there as best we can.
Mary, do we have time for one more? One just popped in.
Yes, we do.
Paid sick leave.
Well, you know, look, I support paid sick leave. I'm proud to tell you guys that my campaign is a campaign that employs the paid sick leave program. I don't want people to be confused. People will say that's too expensive, it's too burdensome. It's not. People use cost as a way to dispel notions or to put things down. If you really want to talk about the policy on its merits, I think most people will say, yes, we probably need to get to a place where paid sick leave is employed. And I think Delegate Guzman might have that bill this year. I'll certainly support it if it gets to me out of Commerce and Labor and then to Appropriations. But I know that the Democratic caucus is committed to making that a reality here in Virginia. You know, I think that is one of those policies where it highlights the inequity between males and females in the workplace. I am the son of a working mother. My mother was a prosecutor for most of my adolescent life, and so she really had to take unpaid leave when she was in the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office. When I was a kid, she was getting paid less than her peers, and she had a better track record than those folks. And so, whether it's paid sick leave or your wages or anything that relates to sort of equity in the workplace, to me, those are critical things as we look ahead. We are entering into this new Virginia decade on this shared journey, and we're doing it shoulder to shoulder, whether we like it or not. And we have a real opportunity to sort of tell people, right, through our policies, through our votes, who we are, what we stand for, what we value and highlight, and what we prioritize. And so I said a few minutes ago, 2021 is the year of accountability. Please don't forget that. Please make sure that you are watching us, that you are keeping track of what we do, what we say, and how we are coming to our conclusions. because we've got a lot of work to do. It's 2021. 2020 was a very difficult year, but now I think as we turn this page, we've closed this dark chapter in American history, we can pick up the pen and start to write a new story. And it starts right here in Virginia in 2021 in this legislative session, and then into the campaigns in June and November.
Okay, thank you. Mary, back to you.
Thank you very much, Delegate Jay Jones, and good luck to you for this session.
Thank you guys for giving me a few minutes this morning. I really appreciate your advocacy. It helps. It's really, really important to all of us. And everybody, please stay safe. Please be healthy. When it's your turn, please go get your vaccine. And I look forward to seeing you guys again very, very soon. So stay well and may God bless you all.
Thank you.
I know.
Well, I would like to open up the floor to any of our League of Women Voters Virginia issue leaders who are in the room. Maybe I'll ask Joan. Do you know if we have any of our issue leaders here on this call?
Yes, I know Pam is here. I know I'm putting her on the spot, but Pam Berg from Voter Access is here. Chris DeRosa is here from Redistricting. I will go down the rest of the list as we speak. Judy Heline's here. She is not the head of behavioral health, but she is very knowledgeable in the arena. Janet Boyd is here from Campaign Finance Reform. So we have a few.
Great. Well, Pam Berg. And welcome, Chris DeRosa. Chris,
Yes.
would you like to say a few words about what's happening with redistricting and
Sure.
the new commission?
Well, we passed the bill. The commission has been formed. There are 8 citizens and 8 legislators appointed to the commission for redistricting. They have to meet on or before February 1st. So that's coming up very soon. At that meeting, they will select a chair from one of the 8, from among the 8 citizen commissioners. And I expect that they will discuss how they're going to move forward in terms of meetings, including the 3 public hearings that they must hold during the process. This week, we're hosting training sessions to use 2 different apps. One is Representable from Princeton University. The other app is called District R from Tufts University. And both these apps can be used by anyone with a little bit of training to draw maps of communities of interest, which is one of the criteria that the commission must respect when they are drawing their maps. So if you have not signed up, we have Representable, one more today at 4 o'clock. We had one last night, which was recorded. We have the Tufts University on Thursday at 7 p.m. and Friday at 12 noon. So.
And where would people go to find out how to sign up?
I'll try and find the link, or Joan might find it.
I just put, I'm sorry. I just put my email in. I could send anybody in an Eventbrite. Everyone should have received it. They were sent out a few times.
Deb just posted it.
Deb put it in there. I didn't have time to do that. But yeah, if you have trouble with the link, either email me or there's the link.
Hope you join us.
All right. Thank you very much, Chris. Is Pam Berg here?
Yes. Hi. Hey, Mary. Good morning.
Hi. Would
everybody.
you be
Hi.
willing to talk a little bit about what's happening with the groups that you have been leading?
Sure. I am the co-chair along with Don Craig of the Voter Access and Voter Services Issue Group. And we've been busy the last several weeks forming what we're calling subgroups that, that are clustered around what our priorities are this year. So national popular vote, various elements of the legislation that was approved, the temporary legislation for the COVID stuff during voting. We want to make those things permanent. So ballot curing, witness removal, those kinds of things. And so we are standing up those subgroups, and we are, we're going to see what happens. It'll be, it's a new concept, and it's one that I'm really excited about, because I think, like in the future, if this thing works, this will be a really amazing kind of infrastructure of information throughout the state, for the league. So I'm looking forward to it. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun, and the people are committed, and I'm enjoying it very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your leadership. And for other people on this call who are interested, how would they be able to sign up?
I believe they can go to the state page and sign up, or if you want to, I'm going to go ahead and I'll put my email in there. Go ahead, Jim.
I will put in the link to sign up to all the issue groups. Just one
Perfect.
second.
Thank you. Yes.
I'll put it in the chat.
What she said.
Thank you so much, Pam.
You're welcome.
Now I would like to ask Julia Tanner, our advocacy chair, to talk a little bit about what is coming up. I know that you're having a training session or leading a training session.
There will be a training session directly after this with all sorts of tips and tricks and methods regarding how best to advocate for issues that you care about, and also the workings of the General Assembly. And that will be on this same Zoom. So if you stay on this Zoom after 9:30, we will segue directly into that. And of course, you're all welcome to attend.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else on this call from an issue group that would like to speak?
Hi, this is Janet Boyd. I am leading the campaign finance issue group. This is an area that League of Women Voters of Virginia hasn't been as active as some of the other items, but it is a very important aspect of what we stand for with regard to democracy. There was some activity in the 2020 session relating to campaign finance. And because of that, we've decided to form this group, and the group actually will be meeting this afternoon at 2 o'clock. Tomorrow, there is a campaign finance subcommittee meeting. I think that's scheduled for, let me double check on that. It's at 11 o'clock. And so people can go online to watch it as well. But one thing that is important.
What committee is that under?
That is actually the House Campaign Finance Subcommittee, which is a subcommittee of the Privileges and Elections Committee. On the Senate side, they do not have a subcommittee on campaign finance. But the bill we're watching most carefully that has been introduced is HJ 526. Unfortunately, it hasn't been referred to the campaign finance subcommittee yet. It's still in rules committee. But what is important is it would require a JLARC report on all kinds of aspects of campaign finance reform. And I would encourage people to go on to LIS to look at the language there and let us know what your thinking is. I think it's a good place to get started, particularly because of the difficulty we seem to be having in getting legislation in this area passed. So I encourage people to participate. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet.
Mary, if I can speak. Sorry, I'm not on the screen.
Oh, great.
Yes,
This is Lisa Coteen-Gerchik, who is the leader of our election security study group.
yes, the election security issues group. A lot of our work does overlap with some of the work with the voter access group, particularly with regard to witness signatures. And
Lisa, we're having a little bit of trouble hearing you.
okay.
Can you slow down just a little bit?
Can you hear me better now?
Closer to the mic.
Yeah, can you hear me better now?
Much better, yes.
Okay. Yes, the work of the election security issues group overlaps a lot with the work of the voter access group, particularly with regard to eliminating the witness signature requirement for absentee ballots and the provision of drop-off locations. We currently have a legislation on both of those points. There's an omnibus bill that Delegate Van Valkenburg just dropped, which is HB 1888. It has a whole lot of stuff in there. And there's a separate bill on the witness requirement, SB 1097. There's a brand new bill that addresses a problem that occurred when third-party organizations sent either voter registration applications or absentee ballot applications to a large number of people. And there were errors in those forms which were pre-filled, or errors in terms of to which locality they should be returned. And it caused tremendous amount of upset among voters. It's a concern because of voter integrity. The last thing anyone wants is to have voters distrust the system and question it. And there's more legislation, but those are a few of the ones that we're looking at.
Lisa, I'm sorry, I need to break in. Is Delegate Coiner still in the room? I apologize. I missed that you were here. Delegates and senators do get priority. So please, do you have something you'd like to share with us?
Thank you. Good morning. And I know with all women on the Zoom, I blend in. So it's easy to overlook us when there are so many of us together. It was easy to spot Delegate Jones being one of very few men in the Zoom. I do have another meeting that I delayed that was at 9 a.m. So hopefully I could stay with you a few more minutes. But I did want to speak to how important the campaign finance reform is, especially for women running for office. You know, historically, because men have been in many of higher paying jobs for much longer than women, they have a lot easier time raising large sums of money and running for office. And I think this is a really critical issue to level the playing field so that we can get more women running for office and people of all different backgrounds and financial status. So it's extremely important. And I thank you all for taking that up as an issue. I am also a member of a new caucus that started last session. It is called the Commonwealth Caucus. It is a bipartisan caucus of senators and delegates, and we agree to work together in a bipartisan fashion to get legislation passed together. We are focusing this session on election and expanding voting. So that's a group that we will be helping to bring along folks on both sides of the aisle to expand. Drop-off locations and expanded hours to vote early is an issue that's really important to me. We have a lot of folks that were unable to come and vote early because of some limited hours in places. So expanding Saturday ability and additional drop-off locations is important. And finally, I know it was an item that was at the last of your legislative issues, but your support of broadband is so important to our communities. And I would encourage you, a lot of folks mistakenly think it is just a rural issue, but our cities actually have some of the worst broadband access because those cities were built and concrete was put down and buildings were put up. And now it's actually more expensive to try to go back and implement that infrastructure. So you know, some folks ignore it because they think, oh, well, I'm not in a rural locality. It's not a big deal. Our cities and our urban centers are in just as much desperate need. And right now, our school children are relying on small MiFi units to get Wi-Fi for school. And if they're like my kids, I give them anything and they lose it within a few weeks. And we shouldn't have our kids relying on internet access by a small box that we're giving them to hold on to until they get that. So thank you for your advocacy as well. So I did push off my 9 o'clock Zoom so I could jump on with you all. You are welcome to call my office. Your members email me all the time and I appreciate it. It's what allows me when I'm looking at supporting bills to know that there are great women who are behind those things. So thank you so much for all that you do to advocate.
Thank you, Delegate Coiner. I noticed that Delegate Willett is also in the room. Delegate Willett, did you have some bills that you wanted to share with the group?
I'm on my phone, so I'll just say hi quickly. And again, it's great to join all of you this morning. Really support your diligence in getting us to a better voting process. Someone may have already reflected on this, but I think this group knows better than anyone that Virginia ranked almost at the bottom of states in terms of voter access, voter accessibility, ease of voting. And we have jumped to, I believe we're in the top, I know we're in the top 10, we may even be top 5 now. And that's a sea change for the Commonwealth. And I think that is because of changes that were made recently. And I really appreciate the leadership of the folks on this call and the support to do the right thing. It's also, I think, making the best of a terrible situation. There's no question COVID has forced us to do a lot of things differently. And through COVID, yes, we actually have made improvements in the voting process. So again, COVID is a huge tragedy for so many people, but we're going to come out of it certainly with a better voting process now. And I hope we continue that. I think, as you were hearing earlier, I think we're going to codify some of those quote unquote temporary changes to help in the ease of voting, and I'd like to see more of that. It was a real frustration for me, and in fact, again, one of the things I ran on is why is it so difficult to vote in Virginia? Why is it so difficult to register? So flipping that equation around, for example, making through the DMV process that it's you have to opt out of registering as opposed to opting in. It's just so logical, but something we did backwards for so many years. So I hope we can continue reforms like that. And again, the early voting was just tremendous. I spent a couple days in talking to people in line over at the Henrico County administration building as they stood there. It's a pretty chilly mornings, but and afternoons, but folks were so felt so empowered to come out there early and to vote. So we want to continue to encourage that. But again, many thanks for all you do. We're going to have a short, but I think a significant session, and we're going to stay on the case here and get. I want to get Virginia to the top of that pile in terms of being best states for voters. So we'll get there soon.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions for the delegate? Well, if not, then we wish you success in this short session. Thank you again.
Thanks to everyone. Really appreciate the support.
And could we go back to Lisa so that she could finish what she was talking about?
Mary, first, let's make sure there are no more lawmakers in the room
Okay.
that I missed.
Okay.
Is there any other lawmakers in the room that haven't had a chance to address us yet? Okay, thank you. Thanks, Lisa.
No, I really didn't have much to add. I pretty much finished. So I'm particularly interested in broadband. That I believe falls within the voter access issues group, though. So we are addressing that.
Do you want to share any information with our members who might be interested if they want to follow the latest that's going on with the study?
Oh, this is not with regard to the study. This is having to do with election security issues that are coming up now.
Okay.
The study work is going on completely separately.
Okay. Well, we are expecting Senator Creed Deeds to come on very shortly. He was scheduled for 9:15.
I see his name there. I think he's in the room.
Yeah, I'm here a minute early.
All right. Well, we are very honored to have Senator Creed Deeds join us this morning for our first Women's Legislative Roundtable. He's Senator in District 25, and he is chair of the Senate Privileges and Elections Committee. And the Privilege and Elections Committees are the favorite committees for League of Women Voters members to observe and participate in. He's also on the Commerce and Labor Committee, Finance and Appropriations, Judiciary, and Rules. So thank you so much for joining us today. And
Thank you.
you have the floor. We're especially interested in whatever is coming up as far as legislation to do with elections and voting.
Well, this most unusual of sessions is my 30th. And I can tell you that in the old days, session was kind of like summer camp. You somewhat regretted leaving home, and you didn't look forward to it. But once you got there, you got in the middle of things, and it was really exciting, and you hated for it to leave, and you mourned when it was over. That sort of feeling left me a long time ago, but there's still important work. We're in a pandemic situation where we have to communicate virtually a lot, and we don't have the one-on-one conversations where sometimes business gets done, but we still have urgent work to do, and we'll get it done. I lay out my priorities maybe I'm a little bit different from some legislators. I don't necessarily call news conferences. I just write newsletters and send it out to my constituents. And I did that last week and kind of laid out what I was going to do. With respect to election law, I'm very proud of the fact that, and just in spite of all the noise about stolen elections and cheating and that sort of thing, I've got the utmost respect for the integrity of the election process. And I can tell you that what happened here in Virginia was extraordinary, and the result was right. Media outlets warned for weeks before the election that there could be the possibility of big swings on election night simply because of no excuse absentee voting and the huge number of early votes that would occur in Virginia. And because localities are permitted under current law to process absentee votes differently at different times, you did have big swings. Some of the bigger localities didn't start processing those votes until after 7 o'clock on election day. Other localities processed the votes early, and so the results came in kind of as at the time you expected. In some localities, there were such big swings. I mean, anybody that saw the election results thought late in the evening that Mark Warner was in jeopardy, even though the AP had called that race quickly. They thought that President Trump was going to win Virginia. They thought that Representative Spanberger was in trouble, Representative Luria. It wasn't until the late votes were all, and the late votes were the early votes, that they came in that we got the result that turns out to be the accurate result. And what I'm going to propose this time is something to take that late bump out of the process. I'm afraid that for too many people, that late bump says that something's amiss. And we have to make sure that people have confidence in the election results in Virginia. And I think we have to make sure that all localities process absentee ballots early. This year, when 61% of the people that voted on election day voted for the current president, and something like 65% of the people that voted before election day voted for the president-elect, and you had this difference in the way votes are processed, the result that the process, I guess the late swings were very predictable, and the press warned people of that. But when you've got somebody outside of Virginia that keeps screaming about the election being stolen, it feeds the narrative that something's amiss. And I'm very concerned that one of our first jobs in the legislature or in politics in general is to give people confidence that the process works the way it's supposed to, and works, and the votes are counted accurately. So I'm going to introduce legislation to require all the absentee ballots be processed early. I'm also going to introduce legislation, and these bills may have already gone in. It's all done electronically. In the old days, we would carry the bills to the clerk, but it's all done electronically, so the bills may have already gone in. But I'm also going to introduce legislation that makes permanent some of the changes we made this past summer that applied only to the 2020 election. We wanted to make sure that people who didn't want to be around crowds in the face of this pandemic could vote securely absentee. And so we required localities to have drop boxes. That process worked very well and they were very secure. And I'm going to introduce legislation to allow the drop boxes to be a permanent fixture in Virginia's electoral process. We also included a provision in that bill that allows registrars, when they receive a mail-in or absentee vote of some kind, when they notice that there's a slight inaccuracy in address or so, they can call the voter and say, hey, you made a mistake in sending your ballot. Do you want to fix it? And allow some ballot cure to be effective. That process worked very well, and I want to make that a permanent part of our law. And so those are the election-related bills I've got. It will be a very busy session, and I anticipate that the Privileges and Elections Committee will be busy. Some of you may know that it used to be called Elections and Privileges. And it was one of the first committees in the legislature in Virginia. George Washington, when he was a member of the House of Burgesses, actually served on the Committee on Elections and Privileges. So it's quite an honor to be able to serve as chair of that committee. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Senator. The first question is around the national popular vote. Do you support it?
Well, I think that bill will come up, and I would anticipate voting for it. But I want to wait and see what I want to hear the debate on both sides and want to keep an open mind. I have throughout my legislative career, instead of worrying so much about consistency, I've always reserved the right to be smarter tomorrow than I am today, and that requires that I keep an open mind and hear what people say, what their arguments are. I'm very concerned about the Electoral College because I think that it doesn't all we've had, as a student, I remember 40 years ago studying the election of 1876 and thinking, oh no, that can't happen in Virginia. That can't happen again. We've moved way beyond that. Well, lo and behold, the election of 2000, the election of 2016 were very close. The election of 2004 was actually pretty close, I'm not certain that the electoral vote the Electoral College actually accurately reflects the will of the people of this country anymore. And I would prefer, if we were going to abolish it, to abolish the Electoral College rather than find a way to get around it, which is what the compact is. But I understand that might be the more effective way to get around it. I'm probably going to vote for it, but I want to hear what the discussions are.
There's some consternation about reinstating voter photo ID. Can you give us information on those bills that have been dropped?
I've not seen any of those bills. Have Republicans introduced those bills? Okay, they won't pass.
Yes.
I don't think, I don't, my sense, I've not heard anything from my caucus, and the last time I checked, my caucus had the majority of votes on the committee.
Okay. You supported early pre-processing. There's a follow-up question. Should registrars be required to start tallying absentee votes earlier than they now do?
That's an interesting question. I don't want any sort of early voting. You remember in 1980, they called the election, and most of you aren't old enough to remember that, but I remember 1980, and the election was called so early that people were afraid that affected some vote in California and some of the West Coast states.
Mm-hmm.
You will recall that President Carter was defeated that year and only won a handful of states. I think Georgia, Massachusetts, and maybe the District of Columbia and Minnesota, where Senator Mondale or Vice President Mondale was from. I'm concerned that any sort of tallying of votes could lead to somebody knowing what the results are, what the early results are, and that affecting the vote. So I'm not so much in favor of early counting as I am as in favor of early processing, because once you feed the ballot into the machine, once you process the vote, all you have to do is press a button. You know, in Virginia, you know, every ballot is paper. We have paper ballots, so there's a paper trail for everything. And I'm confident that once the ballots are processed, the counting can be easily achieved. So I don't know that I'd favor early counting, but I would favor early processing.
Several questions on 272, the universal right to vote. This is by
now,
Senator Locke.
now, you know, and honestly, is 272, you're talking about a resolution for a constitutional amendment?
I believe so, Julia?
Okay.
Yes.
I have, you know, for probably 15 or 20 years, I remember when Senator Yvonne Miller used to press legislation to take the restoration of rights out of the hands of the governor. I favored that approach for a long time. You know, I've worried that restoration of rights is too dependent on who's in the governor's mansion at the time. Now, all the last governors we've had, from Warner to Kane to McDonnell to McAuliffe to Northam, they've all done a better job than their predecessor of restoring rights, and I'm grateful for that. But we ought to have a process that's not in the hands of the governor. Should we just say that everybody has a right to vote, or should we say that the process is in the hands of the General Assembly? I would probably prefer to put the process in the hands of the General Assembly, though I've got an open mind. You know, I want to hear the arguments around the other bill. You know, right now under current law, only Utah and Vermont, you know, do felons retain the right to vote even after they're convicted. Should we join those two states? I mean, Utah and Vermont are on the two extremes. One's far right, one's far left. Should we join those two states? You know,
on my days wide.
You know,
What about the provision, the prison provision that was added because it was added as part of Jim Crow? I think, Denise, that's what you.
You know, I've not looked at the bill closely, and I've not listened to the arguments on it yet.
Okay. The next question is about mandatory drop boxes.
Yes.
Should they be mandatory?
Yes, ma'am, they should be. I think we ought to have that. We're going to. I've got legislation to make the drop boxes mandatory in every locality.
Okay.
Okay, there's a question on campaign finance. What actions do you think will come through your committee regarding campaign finance?
Well, I just don't know. I know that there have been bills in the past to limit campaign contributions. There have been bills in the past to limit contributions from different types of companies. I've generally voted in favor of those. I think, as I said a little bit ago, I think one of our biggest tasks as legislators is making sure that people have faith in the process, restoring, you know, cynicism is as American as apple pie, and everybody is cynical about government. I think part of my job is to make people less cynical, to give people some faith that things are working the way they're supposed to. Here's what I think about campaign finance. I think you go back to the Buckley decision in the late 70s, and then the Citizens United decision about 10 years ago. You know, it's just gone out of hand. Out of control. What we need to do is we need a federal constitutional amendment that, in my view, that says that campaign spending is not free speech, is not speech, and gives the states the ability to regulate it. I think honestly that that limits on contributions generally, you know, they favor the wealthy candidate. You know, the candidate who has deep pockets, who can self-fund, therefore has an advantage over other candidates. And I think that's ultimately what you want to do is limit the amount of money that can be spent on campaigns. I would prefer to do it kind of English style, that where we have limited amounts of time to campaign and limited amounts of money to spend on campaigns. I think we've created a false economy around campaigns in general, and I think that feeds the cynicism people feel about government.
Sort of following with the disenfranchisement, which is obviously a big issue with the league. What about criminal justice bills? Do you see any specific criminal justice bills that you could support?
Well, you know, with this past session, during the special session, we enacted some really groundbreaking bill reforms. The biggest one, in my view, during the special session was the one that eliminated the jury penalty, that basically ensured for the first time, and this shouldn't be a big deal, but it is a big deal, because we in Kentucky were the only states in the country where jury sentencing still took place. When you eliminated the jury penalty, when you eliminated jury sentencing, you guaranteed people the right to a jury trial. And that was the most important legislation we passed during the special session. And I think during this session, there will be discussions about sentencing, about mandatory minimum sentences. I think there will be discussions about the death penalty. I think there will be a lot of substantive discussions. And I think some of those bills have a real good chance of passing. Now,
Okay.
It's just impossible to predict until we know what the bills are that are going to be introduced and what the discussion is going to be.
Okay, thank you. It looks like we're getting to the end of the hour. Mary, I'll throw it back to you. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Creedietz, for joining us this morning, and best of luck for the session.
Thanks very much. See you.
Thank you all for joining us. Julia, are you starting your session right away, or do you want to have a 5-minute break before starting the training session?
Why don't we take a 2-minute break, and Beth Obenshane will lead us off.
That sounds good. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And thank you for joining us.
To have Julia Tanner as the Virginia League's Advocacy and Action Coordinator. Julia and our state president, Deb Wake, have already been hard at work for weeks, lobbying legislators on our legislative priorities before today's opening of the Virginia General Assembly. Julia became active in lobbying the legislature as Arlington's ERA coordinator. She helped to bring together a significant group that successfully worked for ratification of the ERA. This will be her second general session as chief lobbyist for the Virginia League. She's also on the legislative committee of the Arlington Civic Federation and on the city's commission on the status of women. Today, she's going to share with us how we can be effective champions for the League's legislative priorities with our local legislators. We'll start off today with an overview of how a bill progresses through the Virginia General Assembly, as well as the power of the majority party and the importance of building relationships with the minority party. This year also, a challenge will be that the legislature is operating on a very tight 30-day schedule. Next, we'll review the League's top priorities for the session. And again, support from our local leagues and from league members across the state is so important in gaining passage of these bills. Then Julia is going to coach us in how to be an effective lobbyist, how to set up a meeting with our legislators, some best tips for making a meaningful impression in a short amount of time, the effectiveness of phone calls and emails, letters, and also how we can be effective in using social media to affect public opinion. So there will also be time for your questions. So Julia, I'll turn this over to you. We are eager to hear from you today.
Thank you very much, Beth. And I really hope I managed to pack everything into 1 hour. So Beth is the president of the Montgomery County League, and we are so fortunate that she agreed to moderate this session. So very grateful to her. And I will remind everyone that this session is being recorded. and will be available later. Thank you to Joan Port for setting up this meeting, and to Deb Wake, our president, who is going to be providing her favorite advocacy tip for us later. So welcome everyone, league members, partners. This is to talk a little bit about the General Assembly. We'll try and keep some of the strokes fairly broad brush, but also give you details. So if you're an experienced advocate, maybe you will learn a little something new. I'm going to try at this moment to share my screen with you so that we can go through a PowerPoint. Here we go. So why do we advocate? As a league, we speak with our General Assembly members and their aides because state legislators make laws that affect all of us, from elections to education, healthcare to human rights, firearms to fracking. All of these impact our lives and our ideals throughout the Commonwealth. As the General Assembly materials say, active citizen participation is an integral part of a functioning representative democracy. Members of the General Assembly want and need citizen input when they are crafting laws. As a citizen of the Commonwealth of Virginia, it is your right to voice your opinion regarding pending legislation. There are many ways in which citizens can communicate with their legislator. Phone calls, letters, email, or through visits to their legislative offices. We're doing all of those visits virtually over Zoom this year, and it is still working out just fine. By sharing your opinions and ideas with your elected officials, you help them resolve issues and evaluate pending legislation. Now, none of us speak for the league unless the president, Deb Wake, has, and she rarely does this, has delegated the freedom to do so to us. However, knowledge of what the league is advocating for can inform all of us and help us together make real change. So you will want to learn who your senator or delegate is and how to contact them. During this training, yes, while I'm talking, if possible, it would be great if you are able to, especially if you're on a computer, you may be able to do this. You can double click on my presentation to reduce it. Go to your browser and go to whosmy.virginiageneralassembly.gov and enter your address in the box. The reason for this is you can find out who your state delegate and senator are and what their contact information is. In the State League, we advocate to state legislators. So that means we're not directing our advocacy at Tim Kaine or Mark Warner. They are our US senators. The US National League advocates towards our US members of Congress and senators. When you go to whosmy.virginiageneralassembly.gov, you want to look for your state delegate and your state senator, of which there will only be one. Write down or bookmark that information so that you can contact them repeatedly, often. It's good. They are interested in your thoughts. We do try and keep them brief, and I'll get into that later. So let's talk about the General Assembly. The General Assembly is our legislative branch. It's bicameral, similar to the federal government, meaning it has two chambers, the state Senate and the state House. The Senate has 40 members and the House has 100 members. Members are elected by citizens in their election districts, which are distinct outlined areas of the Commonwealth. And Beth, by the way, I cannot see my computer clock, so please, if you would be willing to give me a warning when we get close to quarter of, I'd be very grateful.
Certainly.
Thank you. So Virginia state senators serve in office for 4 years and delegates serve for 2 years. In order for a bill to become law in Virginia, both chambers must vote for it. Usually that just takes a simple majority vote of ayes more than nays. So that means you're going to be trying to get at least 21 votes for your bill in the Senate and at least 51 in the House. The last one can be a tiebreaker vote from the lieutenant governor. And then the bill will go to the governor, who must sign it, veto it, or ask for amendments. The General Assembly meets once a year in what's called the general session for a month or longer to pass legislation. Then about 6 weeks later, they will meet again in what's called the reconvened session to consider the governor's amendments or vetoes. And they sometimes will also have a special session to attend to the budget or other unfinished business. The general session starts the second Wednesday of January. Oh, look at that. Today is the second Wednesday of January. So the general session starts today, and it's going to be an action-packed session because although normally in even number years, the legislature meets for 60 calendar days, in odd number years, they meet for 30 days, but that's usually extended to 45. This year, they are sticking with the 30 days. And they've imposed on themselves bill limits. So the delegates will each be introducing not more than 7 bills, and the senators will each be introducing not more than 12. This is going to be a very carefully planned out and rapidly executed session, and we're going to need to stay on our toes. In the middle of the general session is a day that is called crossover. By crossover, your bill needs to have been passed by the chamber that originated it, whether that's the House or the Senate. If you have versions in both chambers and you get to crossover, you're okay as long as one of those bills has at least gotten through its chamber of origin. You can keep going and that bill might still pass. We were told by a delegate who is fairly knowledgeable that the likely date for crossover for this session will be January 27th. However, we will find out for certain very soon because they will adopt rules for this session.
Julia, you're almost at quarter of.
Okay, I'm going to advance. So thank you, Beth. The Legislative Information System, also called LIS, is how we can follow things, even though it's all over the computer right now. It's over a video or a text, screens like you can see here. So the URL is I've put it at the bottom of this page. It's lis.virginia.gov. Go there, play around, click on things. It's not going to hurt you, and you are going to discover all kinds of interesting information and different ways to search for bills. Something that is really fun is to watch the video. Generally, each day at noon, the House and the Senate often meet in what are called floor sessions, whether or not they're remote, which this year, at least the House is going to be remote and the Senate may be remote part of the time, but they're planning to meet in person. It's a little bit like a British soap opera. They tend to be quite polite, but there's a lot of deviousness that you may detect going on in the background, which makes it fun and interesting. There is also a schedule of meetings right here on the homepage, and if you click on that, it will let you know what's going on that day and give you links so you can watch. And we have a list of standing committees. So if you go to the bills list or the members list and you can't find what you want, go to the standing committees list. Look for the committee that you think might have your bill. And you can look at the bills that it's considering. You can look at their dockets or agendas and see what day they may consider your bill if that agenda is already up. So when a bill gets filed, usually the Speaker of the House or the Senate clerk in consultation with the majority leader will assign it to a committee. If a bill does not get assigned to committee, you're in trouble. You really want your bill to be assigned to a committee and heard in a committee. They have a delightful array of ways to defeat bills, and you want to know what those are called so that you'll know what's happening if you're watching the video. Sometimes they will bundle bills together and do things to them together. They may, one way to kill a bill is called PBI-ing the bill. That stands for pass by indefinitely. Now, if they just pass it by for one day, that means they're going to put it on hold for a day to talk about it and then come back. If they pass it by indefinitely, if they PBI it, that means they're killing it. That's not good. You don't want that. If they want to do it more gently, in a more gentlemanly or gentlewomanly way, they may vote to lay it on the table or lay it gently on the table. Under the Constitution, each bill must receive 3 readings on 3 separate days. The first reading is usually perfunctory. On the second reading, a bill can be amended and debated. And After debate, a vote is usually taken on engrossment of the bill, which then takes us to the third day where it will take the final vote. Then it will go to the, if it passes, it will go to the other chamber, which will do the whole thing all over again. All bills excluding those vetoed by the governor and not overridden by the General Assembly will become law, and they usually become effective on July 1st of a year. Being a member of the majority has its perks. The party that wins the most seats through elections and thus has the majority in its chamber gets to choose who the House Speaker or Senate Majority Leader is, and they control which bills go to which committees, who are the chairs of each committee, and which legislators sit on every committee. So really, they control which bills are going to pass. And this means that the party that won the majority of seats in a chamber almost always gets a lot more bills passed than the party in the minority. So there are some very careful negotiations between leaders of the majority and minority parties regarding what is going to pass. It also helps us as citizen lobbyists predict which bills are most likely to pass and where we should focus our efforts. We lobby the members in the minority too, because it takes votes from both often to get a bill through. Deb, am I at a, sorry, Beth, am I at a quarter of yet?
Yes, you are. You're almost at 10 of.
Okay, all right. Then I would like to talk, I'm just going to wind up with a little story about our system of government. It was a woman who first found out in 1787 what type of government the Constitutional Convention had planned for the United States, which is not dissimilar to our Virginia system of government. According to the notes of a Maryland delegate to the Constitutional Convention, James McHenry, he saw Benjamin Franklin walking out of Independence Hall after the Constitutional Convention. And at that point, Elizabeth Willing Powell shouted out, "Doctor, what have we got, a republic or a monarchy?" To which Franklin responded, "A republic if you can keep it." We care deeply about that representative aspect of our democracy. Access to the ballot box supports our democracy and enabling voters to vote easily, safely, and securely, empowers voters and ensures that our republic will remain representative of the people. So that leads us into our priorities for this year. And yes, you are all going to get a chance to ask questions. Please feel free to drop them in the chat. I can't see them now, but we will come to those at the end of the hour, and Beth will let me know some good ones. So let's talk through what the League's priorities are for this year, and maybe you will see some that really you want to advocate about. You will get emails from us if you are on our email list that will hopefully help you remember and inspire you to contact your legislators. Our first priority was discussed by several of the legislators in the earlier WLRT. It is ballot drop-off. More than 30 states already had laws or orders enabling ballot drop boxes, which the federal government's COVID working group calls secure and convenient. In the special session, Virginia passed a temporary law to enable ballot drop-off in Virginia. It already could be done, but this law really reinforced the fact that that was okay. And a bill from Delegate Van Valkenburg to make that permanent, HB 1888, will be heard later today in the House Privileges and Elections Committee. I hope you will go to the homepage of LIS and advocate for that. And listen to that. Sorry, here are our priorities so you can follow along as I'm talking. We heard from Senator Creed Deeds that he will be filing a similar bill in the Senate. The next priority has to do with witness signatures. This is also an absentee voter support in our classification that you're seeing in front of you. More than 39 states do not require witness signatures on absentee ballots. Having to locate and be in the presence of a witness raises a barrier to voting. It's especially hard for people who are living alone. And in Virginia, more than 25% of people over age 18 and almost 33% of people over age 65 live alone. And even greater numbers of people live alone if they are disabled, are African American, certain other minority group members. Virginia does safeguard very carefully the security of the ballot. And we have examined carefully SB 1097 from Senator Favola, and we believe that it would be effective and a good way of achieving elimination of the witness signature from absentee ballots, given the additional safeguards for security that do exist. Next, final absentee voter support is a ballot cure opportunity. 18 other states notify voters about procedural errors on their ballot. Imagine if you are voting and you find out weeks after the election that your vote didn't count because you made a little mistake. Well, 18 states already notify voters if they make a little mistake and give them an opportunity to cure that. We passed that temporary law in the special session, and that is one of the things it would have done. Is in Virginia, it did allow voters to cure minor procedural errors on their absentee ballots. We are seeking to make that law also permanent. Next is state level preclearance. In former preclearance states in the United States, voters are often losing their right to vote through illegal voter roll purges and changes such as consolidations of polling places to a location that's not anywhere near public transportation, for example. State preclearance will require that major election changes are first reviewed by state officials. Preclearance bills right now that we have seen are HB 1883, which is from Delegate Van Valkenburg, and HB 1890 from Privileged and Elections Committee Vice Chair Sia Price. These were filed over the weekend, and we are still reviewing the differences between the two bills. 100% right to vote is our next priority. And Beth, can you tell me if I apologize, but can you tell me if I am at 9:55?
You're at like 9:54.
Thank you. Okay, I'll try and whiz through these quickly, but Virginia is only one of 5 states that take away people's civil rights when convicted of a felony and does not automatically restore them after release, parole, or probation. This has a disproportionate impact on people of color. 1 of 5 African Americans in Virginia is disenfranchised, and it is a shameful vestige of discrimination. This aspect of our Constitution was adopted in 1830 and was twice expanded during the Jim Crow era, in 1876 and in 1902, for explicitly racist reasons. The delegates to the 1902 Constitutional Convention in Virginia, in particular, repeatedly stated that their intent was to ensure that far more Black men were disenfranchised than whites. As one of our members likes to say, Jim Crow must go. We are supporting SB 272 from Senator Mamie Locke and taking up that rallying cry. We believe in the enfranchisement of all eligible voters in the Commonwealth. Now, I've noticed that when we ask legislators about this, they are pivoting. They want to instead take an easier path, which is still a good path, but not as good. It's automatic restoration of rights. When people are released from prison or parole or probation, then they would get their right to vote back. But in the League, we believe that civic engagement is important. And there are studies that show that even while people are incarcerated, remaining engaged in civic participation can help them feel more connected with their community and be less likely to return to a life of crime after they are released. So voting can be a way to help people remain connected and be less likely to commit crime later. So really, it supports society. And I need to get off this topic, but I know that I and several other members of the League could talk about it for a long time. It's super important. Campaign finance reform is something that our issue group leader, Janet Boyd, is an expert on. 45 out of 50 states limit contributions from individuals, corporations, parties, or PACs. Virginia does not. Our campaign finance laws have been ranked 47th out of 50th. And we got a failing grade in a recent public integrity group analysis. Virginia is called the Wild West of campaign finance. We believe that campaign finance reforms will help restore faith in our democracy and in our legislature. And boy, isn't that needed. So we have high hopes for HJ 526, which is a bill that Janet mentioned, for a study of the issue. While studies may seem to delay, it's important for our General Assembly to be able to gather the information and then use it for real change. So we will be supporting that bill. Another one to look at is HB 1952 from Delegate Simon, which will help make sure that campaign donations cannot be spent on a candidate's personal expenses as opposed to campaign expenses. I don't want to give short shrift to our last two points, so I think we're just going to run over into the methods period of time a little bit. National Popular Vote Interstate Compact ensures that every vote in every state will matter in every presidential election. Now, yes, we are the state league, but this is a compact between states, so this will occur through legislative action. Different states are in their state houses adopting legislation to join this interstate compact. The National Popular Voter, NPV, preserves the Electoral College. It preserves state control of elections, and it preserves the power of the states to control how the president is elected. It just ensures that a sufficient number of states would actually look to the popular vote in the country and use that to determine how to direct their electors' votes. This is, again, a matter of representation. Some people will call it partisan. It is not partisan. It has to do with representation and the way our democracy is intended to function: one person, one vote. The bill this year for NPV is SB 1101, which has been filed by Senators Adam Ebbin and Louise Lucas. And then finally, broadband is a matter of geographic equity and access for education, healthcare, work, and opportunities. We don't want to see kids in a car in the parking lot of Walmart or McDonald's in order to be able to do their homework. I mean, that's ridiculous. So we believe there are a broad range of lawmakers who do support this, and we hope that you will ask yours to support additional broadband, and not just from the established providers, but also municipalities. Cities, towns, even counties want the ability, in many cases, to fill gaps in coverage by putting up their own broadband. And this is sometimes fought by the established providers because they want to get all of the customers. But if they haven't provided the service to date, let the governmental bodies do it. So if someone can provide broadband, then it's going to provide opportunities for those citizens. One bill that we have noticed so far is HB 1923 from Delegate Hala Ayala, which expands an existing pilot program to let electric utilities give broadband capacity to governmental as well as private internet service providers in parts of the Commonwealth that are unserved. Ultimately, we're also going to be watching for amendments to the two budget bills, one from Luke Torian and one from Janet Howe, to see if any money is added to what is already in the governor's budget for broadband. Okay, so now I am going to segue into methods, tips, and best practices for how we as citizens can advocate. And I'm going to open this by asking our league president, Deb Wake. Deb, what is your favorite tip for citizen lobbyists?
So my favorite tip is to have your elevator speech ready. Refine your talking points down so that if you have 30 minutes with a legislator, you're ready. And this actually happened to us when we were advocating for dedicated funding for Metro. We were in the elevator and I recognized Delegate Sam Rasool, and I pounced on him with my little spiel about why we needed dedicated funding for Metro. You may also find that a legislator will give you the time that it takes for them to walk from their office to the elevator to get to a meeting. And so you got to have that quick speech ready and hit your talking points.
Deb, I think you meant 30 seconds, not 30 minutes.
Oh, right.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you, Deb. That's absolutely, that's the most important. People really need that elevator speech. So before you go into a meeting with a lawmaker, we're on meetings. Before you go into a meeting with a lawmaker, absolutely know your top issue. If you get a chance to talk, You may get a minute, you may get two if you're lucky. What are you going to say? And how are you going to say it? You can even practice it beforehand, or you can practice with a friend and each give your elevator speeches to each other. And it's a good idea to lead with your ask. When you practice that elevator speech, always start with the thing you're asking them for. You're going to start with it, and then if you have time, you'll end with it as well. And in the middle, what do? You're going to tell your story. Make it compelling but brief. Why does this legislation matter to you? That can be a lot of things. Maybe it's just a statistic that you notice that you think is really important. These lawmakers really care if a huge number of states do something that we don't do. They want to know, they like to be in with the other states. That's one thing. But if it's personally affected you or someone you know, tell them that, because those personal connections help people remember something. And they care about their constituents' stories. It's going to make it personal for them. So tell your story. Be concise, tell your story. Start and begin and end with your ask. Dear Legislator Smith, I would like you to co-sponsor and vote for SB 272. And here's why. My uncle spent 10 years in jail, and during that time, it really mattered to him that he was unable to vote. When he came back and he finished his parole, that was one of the first things he did, was he went and found out if his rights had been restored, and he was able to vote, and he was overjoyed. So, whatever your story is, tell it, and then follow up with the ask again. So please co-sponsor and vote for SB 272. Now, we are asking all of the local league leaders, if they are able to, please schedule meetings for the local leagues. And if you're a member at large, you may join up with a nearby local league, or schedule your own meetings, or simply place a call to your legislator to discuss legislation that matters to you. These meetings are all over Zoom currently, but they're still meetings. And we're hoping that everyone can schedule these for League Day, which is January 27th, or sometime that week. That's going to be the week we think during which crossover will happen. So that's a really good time. When you are meeting with your legislator, if you're meeting as a group, that gives you a little more flexibility. You can assign the leader of whoever's organizing it can help people figure out who will raise each issue. If you know that in advance, that's helpful. And taking notes, maybe one person will take notes, and that's great. And finally, we ask, after you have a meeting, or if you attend a town hall, because some of those take place, put your notes in the advocacy challenge. We have the advocacy challenge. A shortcut link that you can go to is bit.ly/LWVVA challenge. And we always send that out every time we send you an action email. Towards the end, you'll always see the link where you can click to let us know about your meeting, or your call, or a letter that you sent. And this helps us know which legislators need the most attention and which ones seem to be on a good path already. It's the very last question. Please tell us, how did your meeting go, or your call? When you place a call to your lawmaker's office, you almost inevitably are not going to get them. You'll get a very sweet, polite staffer, or maybe voicemail, depending on what time you call. Leave your message. Remember your ask, and report back to us. Let us know whether so your ask should be, if you're on the phone especially, should be, do you support this legislation? Or if you're talking with a staffer, does Senator Jones support this legislation? And if yes or no, you can sometimes follow up. Why? Let us know. That's super helpful, so that together as a league, we know which lawmakers need attention. Spread the word. Share your actions with friends. Tell friends about what's going on in the General Assembly. Sometimes I find that my friends start joining the league, or at least they're interested. And if they happen to know their legislator, or if they're interested in sending a letter or placing a call, they may do so. And on social media, if there aren't photos, it didn't happen. If a meeting is being recorded on Zoom, people know that it's public. So you may want to take a photo of your legislator on the screen and tell your friends, here's what my legislator said. I'm super excited about this bill. Or once we're back in person, or even if not, sometimes you can share photos from the past. Some of you may recognize this one. Oh, I spent a lot of time with those signs this year. Got another one. Here's a good one. You see this? Yeah. So, we're not doing in-person actions at this moment, but sharing photos from the past can also help people remember that feeling they got when they were doing something good, or inspire them to reach out because they care deeply about something. And when you, their friend, is doing something, they are going to be interested and want to learn about it. All right, so the next two slides are just a bunch of links. And Beth, again, if you can let me know when we're coming up on 10 minutes before, so it would be 10:20, that would be great, because I do want to reserve time for questions.
It's about 12 after right now.
Thank you so much. Okay, great. So we have a little more time. So let's talk. So call, write letters, meet, join an issue committee. The easiest way to join an issue committee, frankly, is using the link that Deb dropped in the chat earlier, or if you just go to our homepage, lwv-va.org, and you go under action, there's a drop down to the issue groups, and then you can just click to join there. That's the easiest way. Oops. And if you join one of our statewide issue committees, these are lovely groups that other volunteers in the league are moderating, where everyone can get together to discuss and learn about or teach each other about issues and education and advocacy. We are also, as a league, very good at writing letters to the editor. People join the league because they care deeply about voting, and generally people in the league can write. It's not hard. Do it the same way as you would do a meeting. You want to make sure you include your ask and you have a story. You have some sort of a interesting, compelling, I wouldn't call it a hook, but you have something to focus around. And if that's something you share with your legislator, that's great. For example, you've both been teachers, or you've both served in the military, or you both have daughters, or just children. Maybe you attend the same church. Whatever it is, that can be a jumping off point for talking about an issue that matters to you. And tie that to the bill that you want. Don't forget your ask, including, in a letter to the editor. A bit of history. A lot of our lawmakers are big history buffs, and they're interested in compelling history that makes the case for what you are advocating for. Let's see. And then here are some final links. There's the challenge link. Oh, the other fun thing about the challenge is our local leagues have a little friendly competition that keeps it spicy and interesting. So we have a cash prize, and your league could win, a few $100s at the end of our advocacy year, at the end of the spring after the session. And that keeps it interesting if your league has logged the most actions at our advocacy challenge. If you're interested in helping us track bills, bills are dropping fast and furious right now. And I know Anna Weber can use lots of help. You can email her, anna.a.weber@gmail.com. Another wonderful volunteer effort by the Arlington League. And I just got to say that because I'm in Arlington. What can I say? Joan, you can thank me later. Great league. But every single league is great. And we have bill trackers from around the Commonwealth working hard, doing amazing work. And it's really fun if you like to geek out, or if you have a special issue that you want to track, you can learn how to track it on LIS. For research and drafting, aside from bill tracking, you can email me at actioncoordinator@gmail.com, or if you have other questions after this, Beth, feel free to interrupt me at any time. Here's the link again to find your lawmaker's contact info, and bookmark our page, lwv-va.org/action. This is where you will find jumping off point to everything you might want to know. How do we form our priorities? What is the league doing in terms of action? and what are our current priorities. So with that, I think I am done, and I'm going to ask for any questions that may have shown up in the chat.
Great. We've got some wonderful questions here. One of our viewers asked, what is the process for citizens to offer comments during committee and subcommittee hearings on a bill?
Okay, well, and actually it's interesting. The Department of Legislative Services just held a training recently, and they went over that. But basically the simplest advice I can give you is this. And if someone has the link handy, you can drop that in the chat. There is a link, I believe, for requesting to speak. But in general, if you are following a bill, the committee that is hearing that bill will generally put up a link on its page. Remember, go to lis.virginia.gov, and there's a link to standing committees. In that list, on the House side or the Senate side, you will see the committee you think is going to hear your bill. Most voting and elections bills are heard by the Privileges and Elections Committees. Go to their page, and you can click where it says, you know, that if you want to speak about the bill, you want to offer testimony. They will have a link up right before their meeting. You can click there and sign up. You would like to speak, and then they will send you the link to the room that you will get put in. It's a little confusing as I understand it. They were going to try and iron this out. I don't know if they have, but I believe last year some people were a little confused because you couldn't always see the legislators when you were talking with them through this witness room. So be prepared and just be confident when you get your time. You're only going to speak for a minute or two, so rehearse your remarks in advance. Make sure you don't just say what you support, but include your ask. Please vote for X bill.
Great.
Okay.
Here's one. What happens if a bill is filed in the Senate, but not in the House of Delegates or vice versa? And I might add to that, is there a better chance for a bill if it is filed in both houses?
This session, I would not put too much weight on that because they limited themselves in how many bills each person could file. Most bills only have one version in one chamber.
Okay.
What I think is more important than which chamber it's filed in is who has filed the bill. So senators like to think they're more important because there are fewer of them. They have larger areas. We can indulge them in that. I guess perhaps in some ways, maybe they are. They've certainly generally been around longer. But the House members are certainly incredibly important too, and sometimes more tied in to, because they serve smaller areas, they know deeply and feel in their hearts, and they have a narrower mission that's a little easier for them. So it's not really which chamber, it's who. Look at the track record of the person you are asking to file your bill, or the person who is carrying your bill. Have they gotten a lot of their bills passed? Do their colleagues seem to respect them? And it's not really that exactly, it's more, do they file bills with a thought towards what is able to pass, or are they able to push their colleagues to get things accomplished? So look at their track record. And so look at the past sessions of bills, which you can call up on the LIS site on the upper left. There's a toggle so you can go to the previous sessions and then look up a legislator's bills. And on each bill page, if you scroll to the bottom of a page summarizing what happened with a bill, at the very end, if it says acts of assembly, that generally means, okay, both houses passed it. You'll see the votes on the list. And then at the very end, governor signed it. Acts of assembly means it went into our laws. Good, that bill passed. So look at their track record. The leaders of the General Assembly generally are the best people to sponsor a bill if possible. You want someone in leadership. They've been around a long time. They have a lot of friends. They're very powerful.
Great. How many states have the reconvening step to consider the governor's changes? This is a person who's lived in other states and was not familiar with this process.
Interesting. And I actually don't know the answer to that question. And I'm not astonished at that. There are actually lots of things I don't
Right.
know. So I didn't mean,
Right,
I didn't mean to sound arrogant if I did. I do not know the answer, and I would be really interested if anyone happens to look that up. I'd love to learn that.
Well, I would just assume that probably all of the states would have a session to try and override, would have a veto override session. But again, we will try and find that out. Someone said, there is a bill to make the witness signature more difficult by requiring the witness to add their address. Is there an effort to, I think we are pushing to make sure the witness requirement is completely erased. Is there also a push perhaps from some legislators to actually strengthen that, or have we heard of that?
So I don't think that that bill will pass.
Okay.
The current majority is fairly aligned with the league at the moment on this particular issue of trying to make voting easier. And as I mentioned, the majority tends to have a lot of power. So I don't think they're going to make voting harder, which is what that would do.
Okay, great. Someone also asked, and Chris DeRosa gave us a response to, but under the 100% right to vote, if someone is in prison and is not registered to vote, could they be allowed to register to vote while in prison? Chris said she believed that is the fact, but do we know for sure? And if so, can they register online, or what process would they, do we know?
Chris is actually a leader in Spread the Vote. And I have to say, she's fairly authoritative on this, despite her modesty and the way that she phrased it. Chris, do you want to say anything in addition?
Sure. I believe that they would be allowed to register to vote. Online registrations is available only if you have a DMV ID or account. So if you don't have an ID, Virginia ID, you will have to use a paper voter registration form. In Arlington, we've actually gone into the detention center a few times to try and register people to vote. It's a little tricky because you're limited as to what you can bring in, but I think that's what's allowed throughout the state. Okay. Denise had her hand up, so
yeah,
she may have something.
Denise, did you have something to add?
I was just going to say, because the 100% right to vote, they don't lose that right to vote. They would have the option to register. Also, as you brought up, Chris, I was going to say, a lot of us attend third party, what's called that's what they call it at the State Board of Elections, third party voting training for the express purpose of taking paper ballots into various communities, including people who are under the banner of, quote, Department of Corrections as well. So that you're absolutely spot on with that. And that's one way to do it.
Great. Thank you. That's very, very informative and helpful. Here is a question from, it probably involves larger leagues. Is one league mentions that they have 20 legislators in their area, and their co-presidents obviously don't live in all 20 of those districts. So was looking for guidance about setting up meeting with the legislators and how that works. In other words, are legislators usually willing to meet with the president of a local league, or only if that local league president lives in their district?
I would say yes and yes. So generally, even if that local league leader does not live in their district, let's say, and I don't know who put in the question, but let's take Fairfax, which is a very large jurisdiction, for example. Mm-hmm. If one of the co-presidents of Fairfax wanted to meet with a legislator anywhere in Fairfax, I am quite sure that that legislator will meet with them because they are the co-president of the League of Women Voters of Fairfax County. I think that they will get a meeting. However, if the local league leader says, I don't have time for 20 20 meetings. What they could do is, in their discretion, speak with members of the local league and ask them to set up meetings with their lawmakers so that small groups of constituents can meet with those lawmakers. Just, make sure you've definitely got someone signed up. Your league leaders, right? So, you know the way, right? You definitely want to make sure that those meetings are going to happen. Check in with them to make sure that they got the meeting set up and what the particulars are so people can attend with them.
Julia, can I jump in for a second? This is Joan.
That'd be great.
On my president's hat, not my vice president's hat. We don't have the problem Fairfax does, but we still have many delegates that obviously I only have one. So what we do on league day is I set up the appointments and I will be there, but I just did a sign up genius for all of our members and sent it out. In fact, it went out this morning and said, are you in, here's the appointments we have set up for league day, sign up, if you are in so-and-so's district and so-and-so's district. So I will be there as president, but they will have people from their own districts there. So it's a double-edged sword. But yes, they will meet with you even if you are alone, if you go in and you say you're a president of the league. But it's good to have backup.
Great. And this also, the next question, it comes from somebody who's interested in a specific bill, but neither the senator nor the delegate from that league member's district is on the committee dealing with that. So she asks, am I wasting my time contacting a member of the General Assembly in whose district I don't reside? In other words, if you're writing somebody who's on that committee, but you don't live in their district, are they simply going to ignore your letter?
It depends. Supposedly, when members are on a committee, they represent everyone in the Commonwealth. That's their job as a committee member. The chair and vice chair tend to take that a little bit more to heart than other members of a committee. So it is still worth contacting them for sure. However, your first contact should always be to your own delegate and senator and urge them to talk with their colleagues who are on the committee because that can work. So you should try it. You could also urge them to speak with leadership about the matter if they agree with you. You might want to first of all, calling is generally better than sending an email. Emails look very impersonal, no matter how personal they are. I did recently read some really well-crafted ones by a member of the league that were excellent, but calling is very immediate, and so that's also a good option. And then a handwritten letter, one of our delegates assures us, is like gold, at least for him. So, so these options can each be fruitful.
I'm sorry. Did you say a handwritten or simply a letter on a piece of paper? Which
this particular delegate really likes them handwritten. But you know what? If you don't want to handwrite, at least handwrite your signature at the end. I don't know why he wants to make sure people go to that extra work, but maybe it's very clear that they're not just copying someone else. I don't know.
Sure. But in other words, perhaps a phone call or a letter you consider more effective than an email simply. I assume part of that is that they get so many emails.
I think that's right. Whatever method you choose, always remember to start out with the fact that you're a constituent. It helps to give them your name and your zip code or town or even your full address so that the staff, upon hearing it, they know you are a constituent. You live in that member's district. And, this is what motivates them. They want to get reelected. So they want to make sure, to the extent possible, they are doing what their constituents want them to do. It's hard when you don't agree with your legislator and you know that you're asking them to do something that they don't support. But if enough people call them, they don't have time or money to do polling all the time on issues. So if you get a lot of your neighbors to call them about something, they may start to think, maybe I should change my mind. And sometimes they do.
In fact, when you go meet with a legislator, do you find that they have heard from league members and that perhaps helps you in your lobbying with them? Do you get much
Oh,
feedback?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Right.
The lobbying that league members do is the foundation and the source of all of the league's ability to get good changes made in law.
Mhm.
So everything that you all do is super important. And you may be sitting there thinking, well, I'm just one person. What I do doesn't matter. Well, you know what? That's what a lot of people say about voting. We all have to do it, and then it really makes a big difference. And a lot of you do it, and it is super helpful. So please keep doing it. Always log your actions so we can see what's going on in the General Assembly, thanks to your meetings.
And that was the next question I was just going to ask. How helpful is it? You know, if I've sent off a letter and I get a response, how helpful is that to you to know either pro or con? When you,
Incredibly.
okay.
It is super helpful. It's like gold. There's a particular member who I will not name, but she's in a league that rhymes with Ralph Sampton codes. And her league is so amazing at logging their action. It's beautiful. I know so well what a lot of their legislators think about the bills that we are advocating for. And that means that Deb Wake, our president, also knows that. And that also means that members of the legislative committee may hear it in reports. We are going to be making sure that the Privileges and Elections Committee on each side is going to vote for bills to the extent possible. So if I know that a particular set of senators is already taken care of, they strongly support these bills, great. We don't have to waste our time on them. At least, you know, we'll give them occasional calls, but we don't have to spend too much time reminding them of the reasons why they support these bills. And it's the same, you know, when Deb is talking with local league leaders, you know, she is able to discuss with them the current status of what their legislators think if she happens to have that info. And that info comes through the advocacy challenge log. It's super important and helpful. So please, please log your action.
Great. Someone also said, what about leave behinds? Is that helpful?
Those are helpful. They're in the works. If you have an article or an op-ed that you really like on a topic, feel free to use it. You're advocating as yourself as a citizen. That's great. The league is going to have leave behinds ready by league day, if not before, so that you will have them. We'll try and get them ready for you by league day week, so that you will have them ready to send with your thank you notes or in advance when you're requesting appointments with your legislators.
Okay. Well, wonderful. I think we are right at 10:30. And this has been just it's an exciting session, but largely because the League of Women Voters has been so involved in all the election issues during the past year and up and coming. And we are so fortunate to have Julia and Deb there as our leadership in the General Assembly. So this was a great chance for us to sort of make sure that we are up to date and ready to go in writing our legislators. And Julia, any final word that you wanted to share?
I'm really grateful to all of you for listening through this. If you have further questions, never hesitate to reach out. I see that Deb has unmuted. So Deb, do you have further thoughts to add?
I do. I put your email address into the chat. And in case you guys don't know, if you click to the three little dots to the right of file, you can save the chat. So if there are links in there that you don't want to lose, you could do that. And I imagine Joan will also share those out after the meeting. But thank you all so much for your passion, for your time, for your advocacy, caring, and letting your lawmakers know they're the ones that are representing you, and they need to know how best to represent you. So don't be quiet, reach out to them, let them know what's on your mind. And thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you all for joining us, and let's get to work. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Take care.
Bye.